You know that person everyone calls the smart one? Maybe that's you. You did well in school, you think carefully before making decisions, you research everything. You don't jump into things blindly. You pride yourself on being rational. And yet, when it comes to money, something feels off. You're not reckless, you're not irresponsible, you're not out here blowing your paycheck on nonsense. But somehow, years go by and your financial life doesn't look the way you expected it to. The savings account grows slowly, investing feels delayed, big moves get postponed. You keep telling yourself you're being careful, but deep down, there's this quiet question you don't like to ask. If I'm so smart, why am I still financially stuck? Let's talk about that. Because this isn't about intelligence, it's about psychology. Most people assume that smart people automatically build wealth faster, that if you understand math, read books, and think logically, money should just follow. But money doesn't reward intelligence the way school does. School rewards accuracy. Money often rewards action. School rewards waiting until you're sure. Money rewards moving before you feel ready. And that gap, that's where a lot of smart people quietly stall. We don't talk about this much. We celebrate intelligence. We praise overthinking as being thorough. We call perfectionism having high standards. We label hesitation as being cautious. But sometimes those strengths turn into invisible traps. And if you don't notice them, they can keep you broke longer than you ever expected. Let's start with overthinking. If you're naturally analytical, you probably don't make quick decisions. You like to understand how things work. You compare options, you read articles, you watch videos, you look at charts. When it comes to investing, you don't just open an account. You research platforms, fees, historical returns, tax implications, market cycles. You want to know the best strategy, which sounds responsible, but here's what quietly happens. While you're researching, time is passing. While you're optimizing, nothing is compounding. While you're trying to eliminate risk, inflation is still moving forward. Let's say you delay investing for 3 years because you're figuring it out. 3 years doesn't sound dramatic, but compound interest is sensitive to time, not intelligence. If someone invests $500 a month starting at 25, and someone else starts at 28 with the same amount and return, the second person doesn't just lose 3 years, they lose years of growth on those early contributions. And here's the uncomfortable part. The person who started at 25 might not have known as much as you. They just started. Overthinking feels productive. It feels safe. But financially, it can quietly become expensive. And the worst part is, you don't feel irresponsible while it's happening. You feel careful. You feel disciplined. You feel smart. That's what makes it so hard to notice. Then there's perfectionism. Perfectionism is sneaky because it disguises itself as ambition. You tell yourself, I'll start investing when I understand it fully. I'll start that side project when I have the perfect idea. I'll negotiate my salary when I feel completely prepared. I'll build multiple income streams once my current life is stable. You're not saying no, you're saying not yet. But not yet can quietly turn into 5 years. Perfectionism creates a false starting line. It tells you that you need clarity before action, that you need certainty before risk, that you need the ideal setup before momentum. But wealth rarely begins in ideal conditions. It begins messy. It begins with imperfect knowledge. It begins with small, uncomfortable steps. The person who invests before they feel ready learns faster than the person who waits to feel confident. The person who negotiates awkwardly once improves. The person who waits for the right time often never does. Perfectionism keeps your self-image clean. You never fail publicly. You never look uninformed. You never make a visible mistake. But financially, avoiding small mistakes often leads to bigger ones. Lost time, lost growth, lost opportunities. And then there's the third trap. Waiting too long to act. This one is deeply psychological. Smart people are trained to believe that the best decision is the most informed one, that patience equals wisdom, that restraint equals maturity. Sometimes that's true, but in money, there's a difference between patience and paralysis. Paralysis sounds like this. I just need to learn a bit more. I'll start when the market settles. I'll invest when I make more. I'll build assets once my life is less chaotic. But life rarely becomes less chaotic. Your job gets busier, rent increases, family expectations grow, responsibilities stack up. You don't suddenly wake up in a calm, financially perfect environment. So waiting becomes a habit, and habits shape outcomes. I've noticed something interesting. Many high achievers assume their future income will solve their current hesitation. They think, once I'm making more, I'll really get serious. But income doesn't automatically fix behavior. If anything, higher income amplifies existing patterns. If you hesitate at $50,000, you might hesitate at $90,000. If you delay investing small amounts, you might delay investing larger ones, because the core issue isn't money, it's discomfort with imperfect action. There's also fear hiding underneath all of this. Smart people are used to being right. You built an identity around competence, around being the one who understands, the one who gets it. So when it comes to money, the idea of making a wrong move feels threatening. What if you pick the wrong investment? What if you buy at the wrong time? What if you start something that fails? It's not just about money, it's about identity. You don't want to feel foolish. So you delay. You gather more information. You protect your self-image. And while you're protecting your identity, your financial life stays in neutral. There's also something else no one talks about. Smart people often underestimate the power of simple systems. You might think wealth requires advanced strategies, complex portfolios, perfect timing. But a lot of long-term wealth is built on boring consistency. Automatic investing, spending slightly less than you earn, letting compound growth do its quiet work over decades. It's not intellectually thrilling, it doesn't feel optimized, it doesn't give you the dopamine hit of cracking a complicated problem, but it works. And because it's simple, it's easy to dismiss. You might find yourself constantly tweaking instead of consistently executing, reading about asset allocation instead of actually allocating assets, watching productivity videos instead of building something, planning instead of starting. It feels like movement, but it's sideways movement. So what's the turning point? It's realizing that intelligence is not the same as progress, and that action, even imperfect action, compounds in ways thinking alone never will. At some point, you have to accept that you will never feel fully ready. You will never eliminate uncertainty. You will never have complete information. And that's not a personal failure. That's just how real life works. The shift happens when you redefine what being smart means. Instead of seeing smart as I avoid mistakes, you start seeing smart as I make small, survivable mistakes early. Instead of I wait until I know everything, it becomes I learn by doing. Instead of I need the best strategy, it becomes I need a good enough system that I actually follow. This doesn't mean being reckless. It doesn't mean ignoring research. It doesn't mean gambling with your savings. It means understanding that the cost of inaction is often higher than the cost of minor imperfection. Think about investing again. You don't need the perfect stock. You don't need to predict the market. You don't need to outsmart professionals. You need exposure to long-term growth and time in the market. Time is the variable you cannot recover. Or think about your income. You don't need the perfect business idea. You don't need a flawless side hustle plan. You need reps. You need feedback. You need iteration. Smart people sometimes try to skip the messy middle, but the messy middle is where money is made. So how do you apply this without swinging to the other extreme? You start smaller than your ego wants. If you've been delaying investing, you don't need to invest everything tomorrow. You can start with an amount that feels almost boring. The goal isn't maximizing returns on day one. It's building the identity of someone who acts. If you've been postponing negotiating your salary, you don't need a dramatic confrontation. You can start by documenting your value, practicing the conversation, taking one uncomfortable step. If you've been stuck in research mode, set a deadline for decisions, not because you're impulsive, but because you respect time. Give yourself a window to learn, then move. And accept that small mistakes are tuition, not tragedy. Another practical shift is automating where possible. Automation removes the emotional friction that overthinkers struggle with. When money moves automatically into savings or investments, you're not redeciding every month. You're not reanalyzing. You're letting a system run. Smart people love systems, so build one. Then let it work quietly in the background while you focus on living. There's also an emotional component here that matters. You might need to forgive yourself for the years you spent preparing. Maybe you realize you could have started earlier. Maybe you see the lost time. But regret doesn't compound. Action does. You're not behind because you're unintelligent. You're behind because your strengths were misapplied in an environment that rewards momentum. And the good news is, once you redirect those strengths, you can move quickly. Your ability to learn becomes an asset once it's paired with execution. Your analytical mind becomes powerful once it's not paralyzed by perfection. Your caution becomes wisdom when it doesn't block progress. Being smart was never the problem. Believing that smart means waiting was. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in it, I don't want you to feel called out. I want you to feel understood. It's exhausting carrying the identity of the capable one while quietly feeling financially stuck. It's frustrating knowing what to do in theory, but not seeing the results in practice. But this is fixable. Not overnight, not dramatically, but steadily. You don't need a financial reinvention. You need consistent, imperfect action over time. You need to let go of the fantasy that there's a perfect moment coming. There isn't. There's just today, and small decisions, and systems that quietly build. Wealth is rarely built by the person who knew the most. It's often built by the person who started before they felt ready and kept going long enough for compounding to do its work. So if you're smart, good. Use that, but don't let it trap you. Let it guide you into action, not away from it. Because at the end of the day, progress doesn't require perfection. It requires movement. And movement, even slow movement, beats standing still every single time.